You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers, it's one of my Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcasts, and today I chat with Catherine Marshall. She is a qualified veterinary nurse and also has her advanced certificate in veterinary physiotherapy. She's based in a town called Redcar, which is on the east coast of England. Before we head over to my chat with Catherine, a quick word from our sponsors. PulseVet are the global leaders in veterinary shockwave technology. They manufacture the ProPulse and Versatron family of products. Now, for those of you that don't know what shockwave therapy is, it's a non-invasive, high-energy sound wave therapy that can be used on both large and small animals to treat multiple soft tissue and musculoskeletal conditions. With over 20 years of clinical research, PulseVet is used by top veterinarians and veterinary rehabilitation therapists to improve the quality and speed of healing, to relieve pain, stimulate bone and tissue growth, and improve mobility for their patients. For more information, you can go to pulsevet.com. Now, in my chat with Catherine, she shares with us her journey into the vet rehab profession, how she opened her practice in the midst of a COVID lockdown, how she balances her equine and small animal patients, keeping her overheads low and juggling a family and a business, and how she does that, as well as how she sponsors canine and equine sports athletes and how this has really helped to market her practice. I think you guys are going to love this one. Over to Catherine. Hey, Catherine, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me on the call.
Catherine, won't you tell our listeners how you got into the profession of vet rehab?
Well, I've been a vet physio for 10 years now. I used to be a small animal veterinary nurse working in a very busy charity practice where we did a lot of orthopedic surgery. We used to fix them and put them in bandages and send them off, x-ray them 6 to 8 weeks later. Yep, the fracture's healed, take the bandage off, let them go out the practice door on 3 legs. And then I had an accident with one of my horses and broke my finger, which ended up actually having to be surgically repaired. I was in plaster for 10 weeks and then seeing the state of my arm and the movement and function I had of my hand after that, you know, that made me start thinking there's got to be more that we can do for these canine patients when they're walking out to rehab. So then I started looking into ways in which I can qualify and what I could do to help.
Yeah, so after the veterinary nursing, you went on to do a veterinary physiotherapy course, right?
Yes, I spent 2.5 years doing a part-time course, which is now through Nottingham Vet School, to qualify to be the veterinary physiotherapist that I am today. I continued working as a vet nurse up until last year, part-time, with my physio part-time, and now I just do the physio full-time.
And do you miss the veterinary nursing?
I do a little bit, but the work that we do is so special, and seeing the bond that it creates between the clients and their pets even more when they're doing the rehab exercises. It's just, I find it as just a different branch from the vet nursing, really.
So tell us about your practice. So you're obviously now not doing the normal veterinary nursing. How is your practice set up? You're seeing horses as well as small animals.
So yeah, I see about 35% horse work and 65% canine work. I have a little cabin set up actually in my back garden to treat the dogs from. I used to be mobile, but I found that very, very time consuming. And my big sort of factor was I saw how the dogs reacted when they came into the veterinary practice, and knew having a clinical environment, I was a little bit apprehensive about that, because I believe the rehab works better when the dogs and patients are more relaxed. And I've had a big sort of stumbling block that I thought they would be more relaxed in their home environment. But I've been quite surprised at how well they do cope in what I class as the cabin clinic. Yes, it is a clinic environment, and everything's kept clean. I use the same disinfectants as veterinary practices, so it smells very similar, but they're all really, really keen to come in. And I think it's the treatment that they receive and the way that I handle things very calmly, quietly. And it's always on the patient's side rather than in the veterinary practice. It's just rushed in, out. They go straight to the painful area. And
But I think with the veterinary practices, there's a lot of association for them, right? Even with that practice, and of course all the pheromones that have been released from all the other dogs.
Yeah, it is that, and I feel the owners are more apprehensive because they're not aware of what the dog has, and they're waiting for this awful diagnosis that yes does sometimes come. But I think when they're walking into the clinic, they know the diagnosis, and I've been quite positive generally on the phone and try and give a positive outcome, so that they come in a little bit more relaxed. And I always find it's a bit like the hairdressers as well. I talk quite a bit to distract the owners, because I believe if you've got the owners distracted and relaxed, the dogs will naturally relax as well. So.
And as a vet nurse, you might also get this too. So I used to have clients that used to ask if I could express anal glands and clip nails. And I used to have a policy which I refused to do it. And mainly because a lot of the pets associate their nail clipping with fear. And so I didn't want any of those fear pheromones or any like bad association with the practice. So I must say it is quite nice being able to say, no, I'm not going to express those anal glands. It's something I do not miss from veterinary practice.
It's not the most pleasant of jobs, is it? But, no,
especially when you get it wrong. Because once it's on your skin, then it stays, right?
It is. There's nothing you can do to get rid of it, is there?
So one of the challenges that I had when I was in practice, when I was doing mixed practice, and it's actually one of the reasons that I eventually moved just to treating small animals, was I found it really difficult to juggle horse work and the small animal work, especially when you had a base where the small animals were coming to. So very similar to your situation. So I had my practice where all my canine and feline patients were coming, and they were booked in, and let's say they were booked at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And in the morning, I would go out and I would see my equine patients. And, you know, the times when you're seeing horses you're not always able to make it exactly that time because of traffic. And one of the things that I used to find is that often the owners wouldn't be there. And so a groom would have to go and catch the horse, and then they can't catch the horse. And then you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, like time is running away with me now, and I'm not going to get to and then I'd be late in the afternoon for my first canine patient, and that would just make me late the rest of the day and just really mess up my whole afternoon schedule. Is that something that you find?
It is, and I've worked sort of around it. I'll either try and do a unique equine day, which is in the theory brilliant, but there's always something that comes up, owners can't make it, things like that. So what I tend to try and do is switch the day around. So I'll do all my canine patients in the morning, and then I'll do my equine patients in the afternoon, and I try and give them a rough sort of like time slot that I can be in there, because there's nothing worse than clock watching, waiting for somebody to turn up. So I'll give them like a half an hour window that I'll try and be there between, and I generally always remind them the night before as well via text message. It can be labour intensive because there is only me doing this. I don't have any staff or anything, but I've found sometimes you'll travel 30-45 minutes to get somewhere and there's nobody there, and you finally get hold of them and they've forgotten. So I'll just spend 5 minutes on a night like texting my patients, or we're trialing a system at the moment through Google Calendar, and that automatically sends email and text reminders out, so I'm bombarding them so that they don't forget, because they do find that they forget. Even the canine clients coming in, if you've got like a monthly regular slot, they'll sometimes forget, and it can be really frustrating because it just messes up your day then, especially when you've got a waiting list of people to get in.
Yeah, those reminders are so important. And like you say, I mean, they could be a paralyzed dog or a dog that's in extreme pain that's on a waiting list, and now somebody makes their appointment. So what are the length of your canine patients? How long do you set each patient? Because obviously, you know, when you have a team and you've got a receptionist and everything, it's quite easy to get them in and out. But for you obviously got to get them in, you got to invoice them. There's a whole lot of work that you have to do. So how do you set those times?
My first consult is around about an hour and a half. I allow them, and I ask the clients just to turn up 5-10 minutes early and just wait till I greet them in the car, so that if I am running early, I can make use of that time. Then for repeat appointments, it's generally an hour and a quarter that they're allowed, and I just tend to find that gives the patient time to come in and relax. at present with the COVID situation, I'm having to just treat the canine patients alone. So there's a lot of talking on the phone before the appointment to find out how the patient's doing, and then it's a quick handover. So that's made my life a bit more difficult and made the appointments a little bit lengthier, because normally I would be asking those questions in the clinic whilst sort of treating and getting my hands on as well. So
Yeah, I think initially we all thought that it would be easier, because every now and again, if you have a client that just drops their dog off and you treat them, I used to find those a whole lot easier because I could just get what I needed to do done. But like you say, there's the communication side, and that's what takes long.
yeah,
And so often you're like treating and you think, oh, I need to know this. And then you have to find that time. So I think a lot of us have found COVID and curbside treatments actually a whole lot more time consuming. And there's just so much before and after that needs to be communicated with clients. And it really makes it tricky compared to them when they're there. And sometimes also some dogs are actually better without their owners, but some aren't. Some are actually better with their owner there. They're a whole lot more stressed. They just keep looking at the door, waiting for their owner to come.
Yeah, it's very, very hard. I spent a lot of my time for the first lockdown being quite productive and creating a lot of exercise leaflets that I'd wanted to do for years, but never had the time to sit down and make them look professional or have them how I wanted to do. But I always feel that when you've got a piece of information on a piece of paper, it's great as a backup, but it doesn't ever replace the actual description and demonstration. And a lot of the work, I believe, is, I always say to my clients, I'm like a roadmap or a sat nav. I'll give you the directions and tell you which way to go. But really, the success of the case is how much effort and work that the owners put in at home as well. It's not just a case of coming to me once or twice a week and the dog's going to get better. A lot of the exercises need doing quite frequently at home, particularly if you're working with a neurological case. And I'm finding that very hard and sometimes frustrating to sort of be able to demonstrate, so I know that the owners are doing it correctly at home. And I think I've found that I'm backing off a little bit with the amount of exercises that I'm giving, because I want to make sure that there's no harm going to come from the exercises being performed incorrectly.
It's so beneficial in a second or third consult to say to the owner, can I just see the way that you're doing these exercises, and then correct them, right?
Yes.
But it's so different when you send a video, and then you get them to do a video and you can see them doing it incorrectly, and then you're like, okay, now you have to try and explain, and then they don't get it. It's back and forth and back and forth. So I can just imagine how frustrating that must be. Here in South Africa, we are allowed to see patients. So I think some therapists are choosing to do curbside, but if you've got a mask on, you are allowed to. And luckily we're in summer now, so we can treat patients outside if we want, and we can really open the windows and get some airflow. You guys are, you're in winter now, so for you, being locked up in a small cabin with a person is a risk for yourself as well as your clients.
Yeah, it's very difficult and testing times, really, but it's nice that we can still carry on. In the first lockdown, I did lose a few patients just through the fact that they couldn't receive the treatment that they needed. And I always find that I get really attached to all my clients and their pets. They all become like step dogs to me. And it is really, really frustrating. And I spent hours on the FaceTime video calls and things like that, trying to help the owners do the best they can for them. But it's a very difficult time.
So you obviously have your cabin and your practice at home. Are you quite good with juggling like home time and work time? I've got my office at home, so I must say I'm much better now. But in the beginning, I used to be really, really, really bad. Like I have my times now that I work, and if I go past that, then I stop working. So how do you manage juggling work and family? Because you've got an 11-year-old daughter, which are you homeschooling her now?
We are, yes. She's up in the bedroom. Luckily, the school has now got some internet teaching on, and she's at an age where she can sort of self-direct a little bit. But I'm not very good at that at all. I can't say no, especially if I believe there's a pet in need. So yeah, I'm out here early in the morning. I tend to do my own horses. I'll start about 10 o'clock with my first client. I don't really give myself a lunch break. I just work through and crack on. And then I'll generally stop around about 3-4 o'clock and then start again 6 till whatever time on a night once I've had a little bit of family time. I try and keep the evening work to 2-3 nights a week, but generally it often spills into 4. The only night I do give myself off is a Friday night. And that's
have to. I mean, obviously, also you're doing everything. So you've got all the administration that you need to do, and that's one of the things, especially when you start getting really busy. Your consultations full up in the day, and then you're left with, oh, now I have to spend weekend time or evening time doing invoicing and the marketing and all of that.
Yeah.
So is that what you're mainly doing in the evening, or are you seeing patients?
I'm seeing patients. Generally, I'll maybe see 2 to 3 patients on an evening. A lot of people you'll tend to find are working, so I sort of fix my hours around that. And then after that, I'll go in. I'm very lucky, husband has the tea on the table for me. And then I sit attached to my iPad with my scraps of paper that I've made throughout the day, writing up notes, things like that. And then I'll start on insurance claims and everything else. So it really is often working until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and up early the next morning to start again.
So you're in that place now where, eventually you're going to get so busy that you're going to have to get somebody to help with the admin. And you're in like a transition stage now. It's like, do I have enough? Can I afford to pay that person? And then eventually you'll get to the point where I can't carry any longer. And luckily now with COVID, I think that it's quite easy to get people to do a lot of your admin. You don't actually have to have them there on the premises. They can do it remotely, and you can do it part-time, So that's something that you should start thinking about. Because it sounds like you're quite busy. Where are you getting most of your clients from? I mean, do you have a continual source of referrals? Are you struggling to get clients, or is that something that is happening easily for you?
It's generally happening easy. I do a lot of sporting dogs, and agility and fly ball. I have people travelling up to 2-3 hours sometimes to come and see me with the fly ball. I have the stance analyzer, which they quite enjoy using for that, and that's always a good indication of if there's an early problem going on. And I've got a very good relationship with quite a few of the veterinary practices in the area. So I'm very lucky, I have to do minimal advertising really. I have my Facebook page, obviously that's not used as much as it could be really to generate clients coming. It has been quite good through lockdown for giving information and building up like a client base from that, and having inquiries from India, I think is my recent one, of a problem with a dog and how could I help. But yeah, it's having a good reputation really with all the veterinary practices, and communication both ways with that as well, making sure you feed back to them your histories, what you've done in a timely fashion as well, and then they build up and trust you a little bit better. So next time they come in and they think of a case that they're maybe scratching their head with, the owner doesn't totally want to go down major diagnostic routes of MRI, CT and things like that. I've got quite a few. We're not in a very affluent area here. We're on quite a border of a poor area, so not many pets are insured, and so talking about £1,500, £2,000 for MRIs and things sometimes is out of the range of some people's pockets. So they'll send them to me and say, can we do anything? And then they come on the understanding that we might not be able to make them better, but particularly if a dog can't walk, can we make it any worse? And they know that that's the outcome. We either give it a chance or we don't.
So would you say most of your clients come from referrals and word of mouth?
Generally, yes. Yeah.
So you also do some sponsored agility dogs and sponsored horse riders, which I thought was a really, really interesting idea. And I think it's something that a lot of us have thought about. So I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into how you actually started that, where the idea came out and how it actually works.
I'd seen a few people doing it in the area for different businesses, but again, likewise, I'd always been a little bit apprehensive because when they go out and they've got your name on their back, they are representing you. So I'd seen again on social media, people doing competitions, win sponsorship and things like that. I didn't go down that route because I was very particular of who I wanted to support my name, how they treat their animals while they were out, and their performance obviously is very important. So my sponsored riders and sponsored agility people have been very, very carefully selected on their mannerisms, the way that they treat the horse and things like that, and the results that they're getting. And I do find it's very, very useful generally when they're out and about competing and they've got a jacket or a number with your name on the back. I do get some people just not raising either, but it raises awareness and they then inquire through it. And it doesn't cost a lot really. It costs my time because I give all their treatments either free or discounted, and I provide them with a new set of attire every year for jumpers, whatever. So I think it's a good investment really.
So you basically, the different ways. So do you have different setups for different sponsored riders? So some of them get free treatments, some of them get discounted treatments, and then you buy a number, a jacket and a t-shirt for them. And,
so generally the clothing attire is the same. They'll get a t-shirt, a jacket. If they want a cap, they can have a cap, but not many people would wear that, and a number for the horses. If they're a prolonged sponsored rider and they're doing well, then I'll give them a rug as well with the name on. If they're the sort of people that are going and start doing overnight shows and things like that, they'll have a stall guard to put across the stable with my logo and contact details on. Likewise with the agility people, it just tends to be a jumper and a jacket that they get, and they get discounted treatments because a lot of my agility sponsored rider has sponsored person has 23 dogs, so for me to treat all of her dogs free, it would be out of pocket somewhat. So Louise gets discounted treatments.
Discounted treatments when you got 23 dogs is definitely worthwhile for her.
Yes.
Okay. And obviously during lockdown, you weren't able to work. So I saw that you've been very, very active and started doing some webinars for agility owners. That was obviously inspired by lockdown and not having anything to do. So you thought you'll just keep up the communication with your clients.
It was, and the topic, I did one on warm up and cool down, and that was chosen because it is one of my sort of little bugbears. Do find a lot of people don't give the correct time that they should to warming up their dog and cooling them down after runs, generally because they have got multiple dogs in different rings at a time. But it was just to try and educate as much as possible. When I first started in the physio world 10, 12 years ago, we would go and I would try and promote things at competitions, and they would come and I would be looking at sort of working on core stability and proprioceptive work, and it was just sort of poo-pooed, and people would just walk and think, God, she's crazy. Whereas now they're more accepting it. So I think if we educate owners as much as we can prevent these injuries from occurring and help have the dogs have a much better lifestyle and longer career really in the agility world and things. So
no, I think it's absolutely fabulous. So did you get a lot of signups for the webinar?
I did, yeah. And I had quite some international ones as well. I had some from Belgium and Holland, and there was 3 or 4 from foreign across the waters. And I actually ran the same one 3 times, I think it was. So I had about 100 people all in all on them. So yeah, hopefully they'll spread the word again. I'm looking to expand it a little bit more in the next few months and try and do a little bit more with them as well.
And was it a paid webinar or free webinar?
It was a paid webinar, yeah. So I just asked for £20 and it was about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they got access to the recorded version of it afterwards as well.
Great alternative source of income during
It
lockdown.
is. It was really hard because, as I said, I was part-time as well as doing the physio up until January last year, when I finally took the plunge and thought, I can do this and have a life as well, rather than working all the hours God sends. I didn't qualify for any of the government funding that we got over here. So luckily my husband could still work from home and we had his income. But yeah, it was a big drop to the pocket. So had to sort of try and think outside the box a little bit to help bring some money in and pay the bills.
And is this something that you're going to carry on with, doing the webinars?
Yeah, I think I am. I was a little bit nervous at first, thinking how I could cope. I did do a lot of teaching through the Nottingham Vet School on their course with their practical providers, and I thought I'm fine in small groups or having students one-to-one, but I don't like the classroom facing in front of maybe 20, 30 students. That's when my knees start knocking and it gets a little bit nerve-wracking. So I didn't know how I'd cope doing a webinar, but actually, because you can't really see them and I was screen sharing, it went really, really well, and I had some really positive feedback from it. So I've got another couple of ideas of subjects. So it's just getting the time to put the information together and get the videos collected and things to use on them. So.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, I find, doing webinars compared to lecturing. I think I actually like the in-person better, because then I can look at the people's faces and see whether they're actually understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You get those like confused looks and you think, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. So yeah, I must say I lectured and then went into webinars, and I found it's really strange. You sort of just talking to yourself. But I think now everyone is so used to doing it. And the nice thing now is that pet owners are used to actually being online and doing Zooms. And whereas before it was something that they were a little bit nervous. I think that us as professionals were more open to learning online and learning through webinars. But now pet owners, they're Zooming their family, and so coming on to a webinar is something that they can all do. So it's a great way to be able to educate the pet owners. And I think, I commend you for doing it, and please carry on doing it. I think it's awesome. And that said, you can have international people. So even though you're trying to educate the people in the UK, people from all over the world can attend, which is great.
Yeah, it's important, because it was important to me, because I felt as if I'd spent 10 years building this business up, and it's not just a business and an income, it's a passion. And I was really, really upset that I could just see that floating away, and there was nothing I could do. In the original lockdown, when you couldn't see anybody, I just felt as if I was losing everything. And so that's when I started thinking ways in which I could sort of try and keep everything bonded together, so to speak. And I started doing a few videos on massage on social media, and I just put short videos on my Facebook pages of how to massage your horse or core stability exercises for the horse. And then I did a little one about golden oldie pets and how things around the house that you can do to help your dogs cope a little bit better as they're aging. And I think just those little snippets would also keep my clients going and keep them focused, but also bring in new people as well that maybe wouldn't think of physio, because I still think it's not as widely used as it could be, particularly within the veterinary practices and things. A lot of veterinary surgeons will refer for hydrotherapy quite eagerly and without really knowing what they're expecting them to do, or just put them in a pool. But I think some of the physio is still a little bit behind the hydro version.
Do you have a hydrotherapy center that you work with, that you refer to?
It's a difficult one. We have a couple local in the area that we have. I'm very, very dubious about referring, because I've had, unfortunately, some, not accidents, but things go wrong, and they've overswam them and things like that, and the pets have gone right back. So at the moment, there isn't 110% trust with my patients.
Okay. And you were mentioning that the vets will easily refer to hydro. I'm just interested, you doing equine and small animals, do do you have like as many referrals in the equine side of things than you do in the canine world? Because you obviously were a veterinary nurse in small animals, so you have those connections and those people. Has that benefited you, and do you see the same from the equine world?
I don't see the same from the equine world at all, no. Most of my equine work is owner-led, and it is just performance related. His back's out, or, can you come and check his poll? Things like that. So the equine side, I don't find that I get as many referrals. They don't put the blocks up. If I approach them and ask for permission to treat, they're quite happy for me to treat. But when I first started out, I'd spent a lot of time in my training and shadowing an equine practitioner that did a lot of tendon rehabilitation work. And that was my real focus. With being horsey as well, I was like, oh, I could make such a difference. I'd lost a horse previously to a tendon injury. So I was very, very focused on that. But it's very, very little. And even trying to sort of wheedle away at the equine vets, we just seem to have a little bit more of a barrier with whether physio works for them or not.
I think that horse owners are more tuned to things like physio and chiro and doing something different, So I think that they're used to calling their dentist, their farrier, their physio, their vet. Whereas small animals, people tend to go directly to the vet first.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think it's interesting that you've chosen a lot of the competitive side of things. So you're doing competitive horses, right? And then you also chosen the competitive side of things and agility, because those owners are also more they think a little bit out the box, and sometimes they'll think my dog is an athlete, so it might need more than just going to the vet.
Yeah, it is. It's brilliant. And my athletic ones haven't really come back yet because there's not anything going on in the UK at the moment. There's been no agility shows all last year, and agility and flyball doesn't look like started up anytime soon, because a lot of the time I would have to find space for a regular 4-weekly check on them, and I'd be doing days of just one person bringing all of their dogs to be assessed and using the stance and having a thorough examination and things like that. So
let's chat a little bit about when you set up. So obviously, I can imagine how daunting that must have been. So you've made this decision now last year in January to go on your own, and 2 months into it, lockdown happens and COVID happens. So you must have invested quite a bit of money into building your little cabin, and you mentioned your stance analyzer. Tell us about the equipment that you bought, and how you funded everything, and how you felt, because I think that often for a lot of us, it's a jump we want to make, but it's a scary jump, right? To go from working with somebody or maybe doing this part-time, and then to go into the jump of actually doing this 100% full-time.
It was really, really daunting, and I think that's why it took me 10 years to make the decision. I'd slowly built up the day-to-day equipment that you could travel around, being mobile. So I have a few pulse magnetic field therapy machines with a phototherapy unit attached to that. I've got ultrasound and things. They were all little purchases, but as I was getting more and more into the sporting field and agility field, that's when I started really thinking about investing in the stance analyzer. Probably not the best way to do it. I put it on a 0 interest credit card, and I'm juggling that as I pay it off. But generally, if COVID hadn't have struck, that would have been paid off by now, with the shows that I was going out to do it on, making days out and just trying to get the turnover in there at agility shows and things. The carnissage was another reasonable purchase, but I use that on every single patient now, be it older dogs or anything that's just coming for routine check. They always just sit on the carnissage machine whilst I'm doing my other treatments, and they all find that really, really relaxing. It's just building up over time. The cabin was a big investment, and again, that was a bit of a bank loan job to put out, but I was lucky my husband did all the labour intensive of that, and it's in our back garden, so we've got no ground rates and things like that. with it. So in one way, I was very lucky during lockdown because I had no business expenses. It was just my cost of living expenses for me that I needed to cover. But it can be quite daunting to take on. But I wouldn't stop people saying, you know, if you're allowed to, do it from your back garden, because it's so easy. And particularly having the family at home as well, I can just nip in and make sure my daughter's okay with her homeschooling. I'll be about in between clients and work that out as well.
And it's really nice not having overheads, right? So like, for example, in lockdown, like imagine the people that were renting and having to pay rent still when you're not getting an income. So yeah, that was a good move, definitely.
Yeah.
And how do you charge for like the stance analyzer and, your equipment? I think some people, the ways in which we charge are either we have like a blanket consult fee and we include all our treatments, or we have like a basic consult fee and then we charge additional amounts depending on what equipment we use. How is the way that you set up your charges?
Yeah, I generally have my initial consult is more expensive if I use a stance analyzer as well. So that's a separate charge and added on, so to speak. The rest of my fees are just a blanket. It's this, no matter how long it takes me or things like that. So I generally end up probably missing out. If I'd a charge per hour or half hour and things, I'd probably be able to earn a lot more. But no, it's just a one-off fee. And then the stance is the only thing that I charge extra for, really.
And even with your like repeat, so like let's say you had a follow-up consultation, if you use the stance analyzer, you would charge for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So looking back at everything that you've done, is there anything that you would change? And obviously the last year and a bit for you has been a big challenge, and you've got through amazing things. And I just want to say it's absolutely amazing how well you're doing, considering literally starting a practice in COVID times. I mean, it's a challenge even when you've got an established practice, but actually starting a practice in COVID times, must have been really, really tricky, and you've done amazingly well.
Thank you. Yeah. The only thing I would probably say is I would have gone solo sooner. Looking back in hindsight, I was getting to work 65 hours a week, if not more, and having the young child at the time, I have missed out so much. And often I'd be traveling half an hour, 40 minutes between patients. And yeah, you'd try to map out your route and make sure it's most economical as you could. But some days that just wouldn't work and you'd be backwards and forth. And I'd often be out till 10 o'clock at night when I was mobile. Whereas this has definitely given me a much better quality of life and a more relaxed sort of outcome. So I think don't hesitate in taking that leap. Have a bit of faith in yourself and know that you can do it. And I firmly believe if you put your heart into something, you'll make it work no matter what life throws at you, COVID, anything. Yeah. And I keep just telling myself now, if I can make it through COVID, then we're set up. We can get wings and fly, really.
Yeah, for sure. So what are the plans? So have you got a 5-year plan? I mean, is your plan to, I really love this question because when I was in practice, I actually didn't really have a plan, to be honest. I just went with the flow. I opened up a practice and I got an underwater treadmill and I had a dream, right, of what it would be. But I think that's more like a dream when you win the lottery, what I would set up. But I never really thought this is how I wanted to be. I want to have multiple vet physios and vets, and I just went, this is what we need now, and I made that shift and change. So I find it so interesting when I chat to people, because what often happens is I see people and they start off on their own, like you are, and it's easy to control because it's just you, and you're able to make the appointments when you want to, and then they start to grow and get bigger, and then they actually say, I want to go back to where I was. So sometimes we think that's where we have to be. That's like the natural progression of a practice, that we're supposed to have franchises and that, and that's perfect for some people. Some people love that. But yeah, what is your plan? Where do you see yourself and your practice going?
I think realistically, pretty much in the same sort of place I am now, if I'm honest. I did have all these grand plans when I first set out that I wanted to have the treadmill and have a little hydrotherapy centre as well. But when you start looking deeper into the financial aspects of that, that's a big outlay. And to make the money back, you're then going to have to be working a lot of hours, have somebody working with you and get the throughput of clients. And my basis at the moment is quite a personal basis. When somebody rings up, they get me on the phone, it's all me, and that's what I like about my practice. And I'm quite obsessive person as well, so I think if I ever sort of had somebody else working for me, I don't quite know how it'd work, because it would have to be done my way. It's my way or no way. So I think that would probably be very difficult for somebody to work with me as well. So I think I'd like to maintain the quality of life that I have now with my family and things, but yeah, hopefully be able to see a few more clients in normal times and things. But yeah, I don't have any massive grand plans to change things as they are at the moment, because they do in normal times work quite well, and it provides me with what I want, and I don't want to be rushed to the point where I don't have time to offer that backup service. I always say to clients, if you're having any problems with any of the exercises, or you just want to talk things over, just give me a bell or give me a text message and I'll contact you on the night. And it's manageable at the moment, and I can do that. Whereas I don't want to be at the point where I've forgotten to contact somebody back, or they just don't have time, or they feel as if they're getting pushed out the door ready for the next client to come in. I just like it steadily ticking over.
Yeah, I think it really depends on your personality, and I think what's good is that you know who you are and what you actually want. I encourage all of you guys that are out there in practices to think about that, because I think I'm quite similar to you in that I also like to have things done my way, but I've had to learn. Because, in order to run on pet health, I can't just do it on my own. So I have a whole team now of people, and it took a long time to be able to say, okay, I let this go, it's okay. But in practice, so when I was practicing, I think it was harder for me, and especially when you have another practitioner or therapist that maybe you're not 100% aligned in the way that you treat. I think that's really important. But there are benefits, there are pros and cons to all of it, and I loved working when I had therapists, other therapists, I had hydrotherapists, and I loved working in a team together. But I think that everyone to their own. So everyone needs to work out for them. What do they want? And how does it fit into their life? Like you say,
I think sometimes that is the one thing I miss from vet nursing, is being part of the team. And particularly now with working literally alone, the clients aren't coming in. It does get quite lonely sometimes. But yeah, it's handing over the reins a little bit and giving somebody the responsibility. But I don't know. We'll see.
Well, congratulations to everything you've achieved so far, and thank you for your time. It's been wonderful chatting to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about veterinary rehabilitation. For more information about continuing education for vet rehab therapists that you can do online, you can go to onlinepethealth.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and of course thank our sponsors, Pulse Vet. We thank them for their commitment to their mission to improve the quality of life of the animals that we all love by developing, validating, and providing advanced shockwave therapy at the highest level of support and service. Remember, you can reach them at pulsevet.com or info@pulsevet.com. See you all next week.